As I was saying, the current version is 3.0. I think it just changed last year in September or something like that, October, pretty much. Now to get CCNA Security Certified, so if you want to actually go to the Pearson VUE site and pass the exam, not only you have to pass the exam with appropriate score, but also you need a valid CCENT or CCNA routing and switching certification, or of course any CCIE certification is gonna matter. Now, one of the common, so you need to be either CCNT, CCNA certified, or CCIE certified, and then go pass this exam with the appropriate score level, and then pretty much that's going to be it. You're going to get a certification from Cisco. Now, one of the common questions we get from people is that, for example, if you go to Pearson's VUE site and you try to schedule the exam or whatever exam in general, you don't know the score. So, what is the minimum score you have to gain in order to pass the exam and get certified? That is because, first of all, based on basically you're gonna get a random number of questions from a huge pool of questions. So based on the questions you get, you may get first of all 55 or 65 or 70 questions. In between, the number of questions is not fixed, and based on those questions you get, the passing score may vary. And of course, it's also probably a, let's say, a thing of Cisco trying to protect their certifications, so you can only know what is the passing score as you go in the exam day. You start the exam and you're going to be told how many questions you're going to get and what is the minimum passing score you got to obtain in order to pass the exam. Now, if before you go to the exam, your goal should be to learn, to gain knowledge, to learn technologies, and then also be able to pass the exam, then in the exam day, your goal is to pass the exam. So what I'm trying to say is that I've seen a lot of people that basically they go in the exam and they try to just nail down the exam. So what they do, they go and they get stuck at question number 5 or number 6 or number 9 or whatever. So basically they stay on a question too much or on a couple of questions too much, and then time goes by, pretty much that's it. So like if you get a question for which you have no idea what the answer is, of course you can try to guess and randomly select some answers, but either or you can move on. Of course it makes sense not to move on, just pick some answer, because anyways you have to put some answer in there, so do your best and pick some answers. But if you have no idea what the question is about, then don't spend minutes and minutes in there, trying to basically to pass the exam with the highest mark in there. So if it's you have questions which you have no idea how to answer, then just move on, pick something random in there. Of course, if you're gonna get prepared, you're gonna have only a few of those or maybe none of those. So because otherwise, of course, it doesn't make sense to go in the exam and skip 20% of the questions, because you're never gonna pass. The exam topics is gonna be per the blueprint. As you're gonna see, the exam is divided into 7 sections. We're gonna look it up together now. But unfortunately, we may state unfortunately, because additional related topics to the blueprint may show up in the exam, and that is fair game from Cisco's point of view. Let's look at the exam blueprint to begin with. Let's have this attached on the course share folder. Before we do this, let's look on Cisco's website. Actually, let's do this. So let's go cisco.com. So let's look at the exam topics. There we go. So it is split into 7 sections. And first of all, as you can notice, each of those sections, if you take section 1.0, which is about security concepts, Cisco states that's about 12% of the exam. That should mean that if the exam has, let's say, 1,000 points, that it means you can expect to get about 120 points from these topics. So that's what that means. Of course, you're going to be close to, it may be 140 points, 100 points, but close to 12%. Likewise, everything else like section number 2, secure access, you can expect to get in the exam about 14 points. Section number 3, about 17 points. Section number 4, and so on. Now, this is useful for specific. The short version of the blueprint is useful because, for example, if you have to get certified for whatever reason, your employer needs it, you need it for a job. If you have to get certified, for example, and you don't have time to prepare on all topics, what you may do is you may choose the topic which is less likely to show up, or with the less number amount of points, which is topic number 6, IPS, and you may go ahead and just keep that topic. This is of course only if you have to get certified and you don't have enough amount of time to get ready properly. So you choose one topic which has less amount of points and you just keep the topic, or you choose one topic which seems more difficult to you because maybe you have worked with some of the technologies, or maybe you have been facing some of the technologies and maybe some of them are more familiar. It's going to be easier for you to digest the content and get ready for the exam. But otherwise, doesn't make sense if you're in a hurry and you gotta pass the exam. Doesn't make sense to read through all of them but actually not know anything at the proper level. So it makes much more sense to just skip a topic completely rather than studying everything but not at the proper level. And then at the same time, they give you a detailed outline of what's in exactly each of those sections. Because basically, as I was saying, it doesn't matter if you look at even at Cisco's official certification guide, or you take INE's, let's say, class of this week, or you take other vendors' books or other vendors' classes or whatever. It doesn't matter what they teach. What they teach is going to get you better and better prepared technically and closer towards passing the exam and being a knowledgeable engineer. But in the end, in the exam, you're going to be examined and you're going to get questions as detailed on the blueprint. So because some of the topics cannot be covered, like for example in a 4 or 5 days class, that's why the blueprint is going to be in general more extensive. So you're going to have to be doing a lot of additional reading, and one book or one resource is never going to be enough. One book can be enough if you're lucky enough to pass an exam, but you're not knowledgeable at that point. Like for example, if you pick security concepts and you say show details, there you go. It states about couple of sections that are going to be tested in here about common security principles. So what is CIA? Or CIA means it's not FBI, right? CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. What is a CM? Like for example, a CM, since we're here, we're never going to be able to touch base with a CM because only installing a CM and making it useful, it takes huge amount of time and resources and let's say network devices to be able to show how a CM works and what is the use case of that. It also requires live traffic because otherwise a CM it has no use case if it cannot visualize let's say what happens in a real network, to call it that way. So that's CM stands for Security Information Event Management Systems. So this may or may not be detailed in a specific book or in a specific resource. You gotta know what that is and what is the purpose of that. Basically, your blueprint, you should basically take the blueprint and be covered on whatever it's outlined in there. If it's not explained in INE videos or if it's not explained in other videos, because as I was saying, I'm gonna of course speak about a CM for example, but you never know what is the level of the CM question you can get in the exam. So that's why ideally in general, the better you're prepared for the exam, you're gonna have better chances to pass the exam. And basically, as I was saying, if you're going to chase knowledge and chase understanding how technologies work, then you should maybe wait in general to get a bit more experienced, get fronted with a lot of topics which are new to you, and then go pass the exam, which is going to be way easier than just have knowledge have zero knowledge on the topics of the blueprint. Go read the book, watch a video, and go and pass the exam. You're going to have less chances to pass the exam this way, other than reading, understanding, practicing, taking a bit of time to practice some more, to read some more, and then go and pass the exam gracefully, easily from the first attempt. Then it's going to be common security threats, which in here we're going to speak about common types of attacks. Pretty much it's going to be about common types of attacks. Then the cryptology part, which is we're going to be used this in IPsec VPNs. We'll speak about key exchanging protocols to derive keys between the VPN gateways, certificates, signing, and things like that. And then describe network topologies. For example, in the blueprint, it states you gotta know what is a campus, which is basically the office and where the employees are. What is a WAN? What is a data center? What is the network security for a virtual environment? So generic concepts, just generic knowledge. But you have to be fronted with those topics before you get to the exam. If you look, let's say in section 3.0, which is the VPN side, which is 17 points but are less topics, is going to be VPN concepts, which basically means the protocols, IKE, encapsulations, ESP, AH, and type of establishing an IPsec tunnel, transport mode or tunnel mode, describing a lot of other technologies like hairpinning, split tunneling, NAT-T, NAT traversal, always on VPNs, and then implementing first remote access VPNs, which of course we're going to be doing as well. Remote access VPNs, which is in general nowadays SSL VPNs. We're going to speak exactly why is that when we get there. So SSL VPNs with or without a client. So by using a browser which is called clientless, or by using a client which is going to be the Cisco's AnyConnect VPN client. And then on-site VPNs, site-to-site VPNs, not on-site, site-to-site VPNs. We're going to speak about IPsec site-to-site VPNs, and also basically about the key exchange protocol, which is going to be IKV1, which is also going to be described within the VPN concept section. So there are more points in this subsection of the blueprint, but fewer, let's say, entries. But actually behind the scenes, those technologies are so complex that you're not going to be able to, I mean, don't expect to basically, for example, read the VPN concepts from CCNA books and then, assume that you know how VPNs run, or assume how they work inside out. You're going to have just basic knowledge. For example, if you ask me, when I was back in the days when I was studying at the CCNA level, then at the CCNP level, the more I was studying and when I got to the CCIE, let's say, level, of course, after becoming knowledgeable and passing the exam, then I realized that, whatever they told me at the CCNA level was not entirely true. And then I found out later at CCNP that it's actually a bit different. And then I found out at CCI level that it's actually quite more different than what I used to know at a CCNA or CCNP level. And of course, that's something that you might not expect. But in the end, is basically it is the way it is, because they cannot, at the CCNA level, for example, they have to put in there a couple of topics, couple of technologies to cover, and they cannot possibly explain how things work within 2 slides. So how they work inside out, they have to cut things down to do just a basic explanation, and it often happens that you end up assuming whatever was not covered by them at that level. So they end up explaining how IPsec VPNs works on the CCNA security level book, and then you read it, it's just a couple of lines, couple of intros in there, basic stuff, but then you believe some more, you believe you know how VPNs run, but then the more you move, the more you learn and you become an expert, you're going to see that whatever was written at the CCNA level was actually not entirely true. Not only that, it's a lot more which is missing, which is of course expected, but also what was stated at the CCNA level, it's not always true. It's not always the case that it is actually how things work. And briefly, there's going to be section number 4. It's going to be routing and switching security. They say secure routing and switching, which means from the routing side, we're going to speak about control plane, so OSPF, and I'm going to make also EIGRP authentication. In here they speak about AAA. We're going to do AAA on the iOS and ASA. And then the layer 2 attacks, where they just cover common layer 2 attacks done via different protocols: STP, ARP, DHCP, MAC, CDP, LDP, and so on. Some of them we're going to also implement. Some of them we're just going to speak about them, because again, this is just introduction into how things work. So in here they describe the attacks at 0.44 and then at 0.45 about mitigation or solutions. So it's going to be about DHCP snooping as the solution to prevent DHCP attacks, ARP inspection to prevent ARP attacks, port security to prevent MAC flooding, BPD guard, root guard, loop guard to prevent STP attacks, and then of course for all of them verifications. So basically, whatever you learn, ideally not only you should know how things work and what is the scope of a technology, but also how to configure it and how to verify it. So at the CCNA level, as long as you know how to configure something and then how to verify something, and the verification is not going to be done in the format of show running or show run brief or those kind of things. You have to be knowledgeable and have specific commands to be able to verify specific features which you have implemented. So you don't verify your DHCP snooping implementation by saying show run. You need to know the specific show commands. And as I was saying, because one of the goals of the class is to show a structural learning approach, a methodology to how to learn things the easy way, so you can retain it for a long time, because actually you don't retain it at that point, you just own the knowledge, you just like become one of the knowledge. I'm going to show you in different use cases. I'm not going to have time always, but in different use cases I'm going to show you exactly based on how technology works, and then based on that, how do you implement it, and why are the commands actually telling you exactly what the commands are doing, both the configuration commands and also the verification commands. So in most cases, you don't even need to know the verification commands or the not even the configuration commands. As long as you know the iOS structure and you know what you're about to do, in most cases the commands make sense. So it's like you would have built those to begin with. As I was saying, as long as you know also the iOS syntax, because especially for VPNs, because there are like 50, 60 VPN types or whatever, and so many commands, so many variations, you cannot possibly expect somebody who's going to become knowledgeable and expert as a network engineer, as a field engineer. So the person who does the implementations by memorizing like 50, 60, or hundreds of templates of configurations, and also be able to troubleshoot those around. It doesn't work like that. Then on the firewall technology, we're going to speak about briefly what are firewalls, so a bit of history, how they evolved, also about stateful versus stateless firewalls, so just basic knowledge. Then go and speak about NAT in here on the SA, and also implement that around. We don't speak about NAT on the iOS. I may end up doing that as well if you have time. Cisco chose up to show you only NAT on the ASA for whatever reason. Maybe because it's more widely deployed. I am not aware of what I chose to do only ASA NAT and not iOS NAT. And then they jump to the iOS zone-based policy firewall, which is the stateful firewall implementation on the iOS routers. Likewise, we're going to speak about the basics of those. And then the last bullet is going to be the ASA firewall implementation. More concepts than we have on the iOS zone-based policy firewall. ASA firewall implementation in here. Of course, we're first going to do the ASA firewall, let's say, technology, and then we're going to do ASA firewall NAT, because it doesn't make sense to speak about the NAT first before we speak about the ASA architecture and then basic ASA firewall functionality. So we're going to do it in the other order. We're going to do first firewall policies on the ASA firewall and then NAT policies. Then it's going to be the IPS, which, as I was saying, it's going to be a small topic, just theory. So only describe IPS deployment considerations. So what are the IPS types and how can you deploy IPSs? And then of course What are the IPS technologies? So what is an IPS, and how what are the building blocks of an IPS? What makes an IPS solution achieve its goal? Now, one of the reasons why probably it's again not being discussed in detail is because it's a huge topic in there as well, how IPS runs, and also because Cisco recently, with the acquisition of SourceFire, and basically with their solution of Firepower, they have Cisco has gave up on their old IPS solution and now is deploying, it's using SourceFire's IPS, which is called the next generation IPS. So we're going to briefly discuss about also the IPS types and what it was a regular IPS and what is a next generation IPS, and why would you want to, of course, deploy that in a network nowadays. And then in the end, it's going to be content and endpoint security. We're going to touch base first with the antivirus, anti-malware, and personal firewall HIPs. This is going to be Cisco's advanced malware protection, again just theory. And then we're going to touch base with, here at step point number 2, with Cisco's email security appliance, just basic theory and concepts. And then step number 3 with Cisco's web security appliance. This is step number 2 in here, and this is step number 3 in here with the web security appliance. So just basic information about those products, what are their goals, and how do they function from the high level point of view. There's a question here from Ivan. Hi Ivan. Hi Christian, I understand that a CCNA level is more of an entry level, but is there any value is having something like Virl, GNS3 or Home Lab for this? So I highly encourage you that it doesn't matter what the level is that you're studying for, you should always do a lot of practice. I'll speak about this in a couple of moments within the upcoming slides, but again, watching videos doesn't help, reading books doesn't help if you don't know how to watch them, how to read books, and then if you don't go to the implementation side and then you practice in there. And likewise, when you practice, so there are people that they just read and they just watch some videos and then they go and they hope to pass the exam, and actually they fail. First of all, because reading or watching videos is not enough, especially if you haven't done those the proper way. Second is because they don't pay attention to the blueprint. So they take Cisco's official guide, or they take whatever vendor's videos, and they believe that's all they need to know, and then they go to the exam and they are basically stunned because it's so many other topics that show up in the exam. That's why you have the blueprint. And then you're never going to be able to actually understand and own the technologies just by reading them or just by watching videos. Doesn't matter how many times you do it. So if a book makes sense to read it 2 times, then a video from my point of view doesn't really make sense. I mean, a video it should have straight, direct, good content, while a book clearly has more resources, it is more content. You may have to read it twice to get a better understanding and to clear up whatever was not clear enough at the first read. So basically, to answer your question, apologies for this. So as I was saying, I highly encourage you to go ahead, pick up the topics and try to lab those up, to practice those up. And then even people that do and go and practice and do some labs, which are very few of them at the CCNA level, you should not basically take one example from Cisco, whatever. Let's say we're going to speak about IO zone-based policy firewalls, and then you after class ends, you go in, you build up a lab, and you try to build some zone-based policy firewall, let's say, scenarios in there. So what you should do is not only copy paste from Cisco, like copy the configuration, paste it on your lab, then use Cisco's verification commands, use it in your lab, and then that's it, move on. You should actually own that information. So try to understand why do they put those commands in there. What is the scope of those commands? Can you find better verification commands? How can you test the feature of the technology with real traffic? If you can do it, then go ahead and do it. If you just take if you copy paste from Cisco examples to your boxes, and then want to show commands that Cisco uses to verify the configuration, then pretty much that's not knowledge, and it's never going to stick up with you. There's a question from Anshul, how NAT order works. Anshul, so we're gonna speak about NAT probably in the third day, so on Wednesday. So first of all, how does NAT order works? It has to be more specific if it's on the iOS or on the SA. Then if it's the SA, if it's running version 8.2 or version 8.3 and above. And so it's a long discussion. We'll speak about it briefly when we go to the NAT section on Wednesday. So it doesn't make sense for me to answer that question now. It's going to be basically a long discussion, which is going to get a sidetrack from what we have to do today. So as I was saying, additional related topics may show up in the exam. So the blueprint is just a guideline. It doesn't mean that only what's in there you expect to get in the exam. So that's why the better you're prepared, the better it's going to be for you and easier to pass the exam from a first attempt gracefully.